In today's hybrid world, how do you make a virtual presentation that is just as effective or more effective than an in-person presentation? As a zealous proponent of compelling presentations, I've been grappling with this question for some time now. And as much as I love being in person, being virtual simplifies scheduling, eliminates travel, and allows you to reach more people more cost effectively. Hi, I'm Joe Kwan, the Connection Counselor, and my goal is to help organizations like yours transcend statistics, increase belonging, and unlock higher performance. And a big part of the way forward in the business world, love it or hate it, will include virtual presentations. That's why all my virtual diversity and inclusion talks are designed to be novel, engaging, and deliver maximum impact. But seeing is believing. So I will share a full-length virtual presentation of mine where I highlight some best practices. One last point. I do use some cutting-edge software called to help on the technical front, but don't be fooled into a false sense of security. You and your creativity and innovation have been and always will be the key. The software is just a tool that helps you get there. So I hope you enjoy Executive Presence, the invisible element that propels your career. If you'd like to connect, learn more, or discuss how I can help your organization achieve its inclusion ambitions, reach out to me anytime. Remember, diversity bites, belonging delights. Hello. How are you? No, I got more tricks up my sleeve, don't worry. Oh, too kind, Lauren. Thank you so much for those kind words. So my name is Joe Kwan. I go by the Connection Counselor, a bit of a pun because I'm a reformed lawyer by training. But what I really love to do is teach leadership and connection principles with a special focus on underrepresented professionals. When I look at the folks on this call, right, and obviously I can't see all of you at once, but just knowing something about Lauren, having presented to her groups before, what I can tell is that folks on this call have unlimited potential, right? And people may not always see that, right? So to Lauren's earlier point, sometimes people don't really see what you have because they have a particular lens on it. And if you look on the left, it's the Hubble telescope, and that's the image that they could see. And then there was a upgraded telescope called the Webb telescope. Same exact area of the universe, very, very different view. Now, did something change in space during that time? No, it's actually it's like taking a picture of your house on 2 different days. It's still your house. It's just you have a different lens, a different camera. So executive presence is all about connecting people to that lens where it's to your advantage. So let me ask folks on the call, what is something we've done in this sort of space? Photo is a bit of a hint. What is something humanity has done in the last 100 years that seems almost like science fiction or unthinkable before we actually accomplished it? What's something we've done? You can chat or you can just shout it out. You got a smart group here. Man on the moon, right out of the gate, Jason. Exactly. Man on the moon, right? So we did something like this. Do you believe we created a rocket in our atmosphere? Think about all the logistics they had to figure out for that. Now it's leaving our atmosphere, entering the coldness of space, right? And eventually, we ended up here. How is that possible, right? Human beings figured out a way to do it. And that's because these human beings are just like you and me. They're not geniuses, they're not superheroes, right? Sure, they're intelligent, they're hardworking, but they're just like us. So there are several components that you need to unlock your unlimited potential. Now, the first thing is your spark, right? Every one of you, and Lauren, you work with creatives, so this should resonate especially, has that individual spark inside them. No one else has it, right? You all have interchangeable skills in terms of the things you might do, but that spark, what you bring, your perspective, no one else can replace Lauren, no one can replace Joe, no one can replace Jason or Courtney or Kamal in that sense. However, the spark is not enough, right? What else do we need? We need fuel. And the fuel is the effort that you put in and the products you produce, right? Just being creative doesn't get you anywhere, right? You actually have to put in the time, blood, sweat, and tears, develop and produce. However, it's this third component that is often severely lacking, right? Anyone who knows about combustion knows that it's not enough to have a spark and a fuel. You need oxygen, right, for it to burn. And without oxygen, it doesn't matter how much fuel you have, how powerful it is, doesn't matter how great the spark is, you go nowhere. So what is that oxygen when it comes to business or work? What is that oxygen we all need for our spark and our fuel to go as far as it can? What do you think? Just put it in the chat or shout it out. Space, the right environment. Yep. What else?
I said purpose.
Purpose. Yep. Time. Yep. These are all good. We'll wait for one or two more responses if they come in. A support network, incentive. Absolutely. So all of these things are needed. In terms of the oxygen that I'm thinking of here, what we really need is opportunity, right? You can have the greatest idea, you can have the greatest product, right? But if you don't have the opportunity to get in front of the right people, if you don't have the opportunity to share that with the right people, then you will be the most talented, amazing nobody that anyone has ever seen. And that's where executive presence comes in, right? Because executive presence is what actually unlocks the opportunity. So that's what I want to talk about today. And the first question we have to unpack is, what is an executive? Why does someone get to be an executive? What is it? What is the essence of an executive, right? What is the most basic thing an executive is hired to do? What do folks think? To lead, yes. What else? Lead. Let me see if someone will come off of mic. I'm just gonna call someone out. If you don't want to come off of mic, that's okay. Just totally randomly selected. Sheila, we'd love to get your perspective. To you, what is an executive? Why is someone an executive versus someone who doesn't get to be an executive? Yes, you got a smart group here, Lauren. So what Sheila has hit right on the head is executive comes from the medieval Latin root exequi, which actually means to carry out, right? So I didn't coach Sheila. She just nailed this one, right? So it means to carry out. So what an executive does is they carry out plans. And let me ask Courtney, whose plans is an executive carrying out, Courtney? Whose plans? Like, how does the executive know which plans to carry out? And I think what Courtney has pointed out is the executive is partially selected because they believe that that executive can carry out the plans of the organization, right? However that's formed, whether it's a board running it, whether it's an executive committee, they're going to pick executives who they feel can execute or carry out the mission, the plans, the purpose of the organization. They're not going to pick up someone who's a great speaker or is very bright and intelligent or creative, but who they don't have the confidence to execute the plan, which brings us up to our next question. You ever notice it's executive presence, not executive doing? A lot of executive presence coaching says talk a certain way, or dress a certain way, or stand a certain way. I call BS on all of that. It's not about what you're doing, it's about your presence, right? So let me ask Rachel, if I may. Rachel, when you walk into a room and someone is very sad, do they need to use body language or tell you they're sad for you to pick up on that? So, what Rachel has very expertly pointed out to us is presence is something we all as human beings, and she used the word empathy, have. It's a survival skill. The example I like to use is imagine there is go back to high school or something, and there's like a physical bully in the schoolyard, right? And they look like they're having a bad day, and you walk up to them and you're like, "Hey, how you doing? You want to play kickball?" I mean, how is that going to end for you? Right? It's a survival skill. We need to know as human beings, we're group creatures, we're social creatures, how others are feeling, regardless of whether they tell us or not verbally or even with body language. We need to be able to sense that. And the better empathy you have and the better you are at sensing that, the better you're going to survive. And I would argue the more you're going to thrive by understanding people's state of being. And that's the presence. So let's put it together. Executive presence, right? So all executive presence is when people are around you, do they feel like you're the type of person who can carry out the thing that needs to get done? And that's what led me to my definition of executive presence. Executive presence is the ability to inspire confidence that you can lead well in a given situation, right? That you can carry out the thing that needs to get done. So let me ask, how do you inspire confidence, right? Why would someone be confident that you're the leader? What is it about your presence? Not about what you're doing. So I don't want to hear you did this project or you're very tall or handsome or you dress better than everyone else. What is it about your presence that inspires confidence? Let me ask Tammy. Tammy, what is it about someone that you know, like you see someone who's very executive-like, what is it about their presence that inspires confidence in you? And Tammy, let me ask you, without them saying a word, right, can you still get all of that off of these leaders? How? How? Tell me, it's like magic. How do you know? Yeah. So what Tammy has pointed out is it's their state of being. It's how they are that generates it. Again, it's executive presence, not executive doing. Of course, executives do a lot of things that inspire confidence, but I would argue that the state of being comes first and permeates and informs and infuses what they do rather than the other way around. So I've come up with what I like to call the 6 degrees of executive presence. There's more than 6. And some of you have actually been typing in the chat some of these already, right? So I'm not going to go over all 6, but we'll talk over a few of them. And I'm going to let Lauren pick. Lauren, which one should we talk about? And I think it's just a cool word to say, equanimity. Makes me feel smart. So equanimity is just a wonderful word, and it's just a fancy way of saying cool under pressure. right? So I don't know if it was Tammy who was mentioning it before, with people that she respects with having executive presence. When there's an emergency, they just know how to handle it, right? They inspire confidence. They figuratively hold your hand, right? Not like literally, but figuratively. They're like, look, everyone, I'm gonna hold your hand till we get through this. I'm going to lead us through. Now imagine the opposite of that, a leader with a presence that whenever the hits the fan, they're like, I'll be back. I gotta go. And then they leave, right? Or worse, they stay and they start freaking out. They start running around. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We're doomed. We're doomed. Ever see is it The Incredibles, where the one guy's like, we're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed. Or Aliens, where the guy's like, game over, man. Game over. Like that is not executive presence. That doesn't inspire confidence that you're going to lead well in a given situation. So when that moment arises, right, where there's a room full of people and the hits the fan, who is the person who can lead with calmness and everyone else can hold on to their calmness and settle down so everyone can move forward? That person, whether you have the title or not, will be recognized as a leader. And when people talk about them and think about them, even if they can't come up with the exact words, they'll be resonating. Wow, I'm so glad Michael was here. I'm so glad, Lisa was here, because they have what it takes. So before we move on, is there any other, you can put it in the chat, is there any other one of these 6 degrees that folks are curious about or would like to hear about? So we're not going to have time to go through all 6, but would love to talk about one more. Stillness, great. So we'll get to resolute, Sheila. We'll go with stillness first. Okay, so the way I like to think about stillness is think about, you ever watch the Olympics when they do like swimming, summer Olympics? And when they jump into the pool for those sprints or those relays, they have the swimmers and they're up on those blocks, right? And they kind of shake their muscles so they can relax. And then they lean over and they're kind of like in a sandwich kind of formation, and they're getting ready for the horn or the buzzer or whatever it is to go off. So Rachel, are they moving around before the signal goes off? Yeah. And if they were jumping up and down instead of being still, how would that detract from their performance? What would they lose? And they're losing power, right? Because they want to marshal all their energy for the millisecond, as fast as their brain and fast twitch muscles can register it. They want to pounce and act, not before, because what happens if you go before? You get a false start and you get 2 false starts. This poor second person who gets the false start gets disqualified, right? So stillness is not the lack of action when you should be acting. It's being still so you can act more powerfully at exactly the right moment. And that's the power of stillness for executive presence. And resolute, which Sheila brought up, thanks very much, is, Sheila, how do you feel when your leader or someone in charge gives a directive or a direction and then they keep switching it? How does that make you feel? So Sheila, what I hear from you is you're not saying you should never change your mind, but you're saying that there are times to change your mind and there are times that you shouldn't change your mind too easily. Expand on that a little bit. So if you make a decision, Sheila, and I'm on your team and I say, but Sheila, I don't like it. I don't like it. Are you automatically going to change? Absolutely. So just to sum up this part, if you look at these different 6 degrees, and there are other states of being, right? The way you tap into this is think about leaders that you respect and admire, right? What do they bring in terms of their state of being, their presence, not what they do. What they do is important, but I can do all the right things, but not have the right presence, and you will not follow me, right? I can say, we should go this way, but I can say it with a wavering voice, right? I can say, we should go this way. No, we should go this way. No, we should go this way, right? And I can be not resolute. And that decision was right 50% of the time, but you still have no confidence in following me, right? So what I really want to point out here, which is so important, is sometimes we end up playing the shell game, right? Someone says to us, hey, Lauren, you need to work on this to get to the next level, or if you want to be promoted. And then you do it, and then you come back a year later, and is that opportunity available to you as they promised? What's happening is it's like a shell game. That opportunity wasn't, that thing that they were asking you to do was not really the thing that you were missing. What they were missing a lot of times, right? Not every time. Like there's budget and there's other things that happen. But if you delivered and they should give you what you want and they still don't, a lot of times what's happening is they thought that by you doing it, they would have more confidence in you, but actually they still don't. So you still don't get it because they're not going to take that risk. Right? So that's why I say it's a bit of a shell game. When people tell you you need to do X, Y, and Z, what they really mean is I need to trust you. I need to have confidence in you. And these are concrete things that I'm guiding you towards. But if you do all those things but still don't have executive presence, then you're still not going to get what you want. So now we move on to Lauren's favorite part of the presentation, the Tom Brady problem. So as you can see, I've upgraded my my slideware for this. So the example I like to use is imagine, all of us are in a boardroom, right? Maybe there are some of us who on this call who look like Tom Brady. Apologies, I don't mean to pick on you. But imagine all of us, and a lot of us don't look like Tom Brady, including myself, are in a boardroom and we are leading, right? Each of us are leading that meeting. We're dressed immaculately. We are prepared. We are standing or sitting at the head of the table, and we're ready for the meeting to start. And in walks some dude who looks like Tom Brady, tall, athletic, white male, dressed in a suit. Maybe they wandered into the meeting by accident. Maybe they're not even supposed to be in the meeting. Who is everyone who maybe is not in the know, who doesn't know that you're in charge? Who are they going to assume is in charge, right? Without any other information, right? They're going to think the Tom Brady looking guy is in charge because he looks the part and you and I don't. And that means you have a problem. So let me get a little bit more specific with this and a little bit more concrete, right? And a lot of people talk about the pipeline and not having enough underrepresented professionals, whether it's women or, people from a certain ethnicity or lifestyle, disability, whatever, right? So there's this great quote from Dick Parsons, former CEO of Time Warner, chairman of Citigroup, knows a little bit about leading large organizations. There's no shortage of minority candidates who can compete for these jobs. It's not that they get overlooked. They don't get looked, period. So there's this great study came out last year. They looked at S&P 500 as well as the Fortune 500. Look at this statistic. 88.8% of CEOs, CFOs, and COOs are Caucasian, and 88.1% are men. So if I happen to be in this purple block, this block represents the amount of people, right? There's a little sliver that's not purple. If I'm in this block, as I am here, just through virtual magic, I seem like a leader, right? Why wouldn't I? Almost 90% of the leaders look like me, right? But unfortunately, in reality, I actually don't look like that 88.8%. Well, I'm male, right? So I got that part, but I'm not white, right? So do you see what I've written in that little sliver below the purple block? Does anyone see it? No, of course you can't see it because it's invisible. Let me reveal it for you. 11.2% is everybody else, right? That tiny sliver, 11.2% is everybody else. And that means that 11.2% has a problem. What do I mean? Because you don't see me, you have trouble seeing me as a leader. And that's what I mean when I say there's a Tom Brady problem. So we'd just love to get people's thoughts and experiences in that regard. Have you ever experienced that feeling that like, hey, maybe it's not me, maybe it's them in terms of how they perceive me? I would never, ever, ever ask anyone to assimilate one bit to advance themselves. Don't do it. It's a slippery slope. Doesn't mean you it doesn't mean you don't need to adapt, right? Figure out what to do, but adapting is different from assimilating. And by assimilate, I mean cutting parts of yourself off, your power. Remember we talked about the spark? Every time you try to be like someone else that's not you, you are dampening your spark and you are reducing your power. It feels like you're moving forward because you get the salary or maybe people like you more, but you are actually doing it at the expense of your own power, right? So that's a problem though, right? I call it the diversity dilemma, right? Do you be your most powerful true self that may not be appreciated or accepted or even punished in some organizations? Or do you assimilate to advance while damaging yourself personally, mentally, spiritually? That's a dilemma, right? Because you want to have it all, but the system is not set up for you. It's set up for Tom Brady, and that's a problem. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So what I can tell you, right? I can be honest. I cannot tell you that you can always make it work, but I can also tell you it's not always that you have to assimilate or that's it, right? Even if that's the prevailing assumption that they're actually telling you. Like someone might actually tell you you need to change and be more like a dude, right? But that's not necessarily true, right? We often take it on as like, oh, if they say that, that's the only way to do it, right? What they really want is they want to trust you as a leader, and they're used to seeing a certain way of leadership. So we have to figure out as underrepresented professionals, how do we get them there, right? And it's not easy. I wish it was easier. It's definitely not fair, but it's reality. So that actually is a great segue for how do you shift perspectives, right? This is what we're talking about, right? Look, I don't look like Tom Brady. Why are you going to believe I'm a leader if your prevailing view of the world is I have to be Tom Brady to be the leader? What is going to happen? So I have a little exercise here. So we have this river here, right? And let's see, let's pick two people here. We have Rachel here on the left. She's here and she's the one who wants to advance, right? And then we have, pick someone else here. We have Menaka over here, who is like, yeah, I don't think Rachel, I don't think you're ready, right? I'm not sure you're ready. So we end up with this situation where Rachel's on one side of the river and Menaka's on the other. Now ask yourself, let's ask Menaka. Menaka, are you gonna jump into the river and swim over to Rachel's way of thinking? Are you gonna do that? No, why not? Yes, exactly. Those rapids, right? They've stopped for the moment, but let's assume they're still rolling, right? Yeah. Now let me ask you, Menaka, what if Rachel is jumping up and down and saying, but look, it's awesome over here. I'm great. Pick me. Is that automatically going to make you jump into the river? No. Exactly. Rachel, what could you say to convince from that side? What could you scream and shout over the chasm to make Menaka pick you? So what you're describing is you need something to bridge the gap. What might bridge the gap in this environment we're looking at, right? We're looking at a river, there's two riverbanks. What could bridge the gap?
A bridge.
Something like this, right? You got a bridge. Now, Rachel goes halfway over and jumps up and down on the bridge and says, Menaka, look, this bridge is awesome. Come on over, lead. Menaka, are you buying that? I would say a lot of people are still not buying it, right? They're like, great, you're on the bridge, but I'm fine over here. I got no risk, right? You can jump up and down on the bridge all you want, go back to your side. I am good. So, Rachel, how far would you mentioned this earlier, how far would you have to go to really make an impact? Like this, right? So something different happens when you go all the way over and you are sharing that perspective. Because before, you were like this, right? Who wins when it's Menaka versus Rachel in a battle of power and wills? Well, I would argue Menaka wins because Menaka's the boss. Menaka holds all the cards. Menaka has the budget. Menaka has the power, right? So when you are facing off against each other, then the more powerful person wins and inevitably damages the relationship with the loser, right? Because, you don't feel good getting beat up. However, we saw Rachel go all the way across, and now Rachel is shoulder to shoulder with Menaka. And notice maybe something changes in Rachel, right? Maybe she says, you know what? It's kind of different over here. I can kind of see from your perspective why you may still incorrectly perceive me, but I understand your reservations. I understand how you got to this misperception of me. And now I can talk about it in a way that is more effective. So Menaka, if Rachel comes over and is talking to you in your language, right, your priorities, your alignment, are you more or less likely to begin to see her as the leader she wants to be? So at the end of the day, look what happens. Menaka comes over and joins the Rachel bandwagon, and she gets the promotion or whatever it is. So it's just a little metaphor I came up with to talk about how you can really make a difference. Any questions? I'm going to pause. I know we're coming up to the end of the time. Any questions, perspectives people would like to share? Yeah, absolutely. It is a fantastic point. And just to share, the metaphor is not about becoming someone else. The metaphor is about helping someone see you better for who you truly are, right? Your point still holds though. It's a cheap and easy way to become a mini-me, right? That's the easiest, least integrity having route, especially when you are not really a mini-me, right? You see a lot of people, they start dressing like their boss, right? I knew a guy, he didn't like football or hockey, I forget what sport, and all of a sudden he became a fan because his boss was a fan, and maybe he legitimately ended up liking it later, but it was very contrived, right? It was not him, right? And I don't think that's necessary. Is it effective? Sure, it's effective. But again, what is the cost? The cost is to your integrity. The cost is to your spark, right? You're dampening your own spark by trying to adopt someone else. So although financially or even in a career perspective, that's one way to do it and it can be effective, there is a cost. I would always argue there is a better way to do it. And that's sort of the next and last part of what I want to share with you today. Oh my God, the year of the CEO switch saw the sweater vest replaced by the cashmere half zip. Exactly. The hoodies. Remember with Zuckerberg and everyone wearing the hoodies? It's just, come on, people, love yourself. Really, just love yourself. All right. Don't hate yourself. Really love yourself, be yourself, and figure out a way to do it in a way where you have integrity, where you can be proud to tell your children about your career. You can go to sleep at night and sleep like a baby because you're not worried about what new fad you're going to have to pick up on because that's what the executive team is into. Just respect yourself. Yeah, thanks for that perspective. Totally, Lauren. So I just want to wrap up with this last piece because people have mentioned this, right? The concern has come out already in this presentation: assimilation versus being punished for being yourself. Or what if an organization says you gotta assimilate, otherwise you're not going, to advance. And this is what I like to call the code of authenticity, right? Because you'll read Brene Brown, love Brene Brown. You'll read a lot of other people talking about authenticity, how it's a superpower. I argue it is not always a superpower. It's context specific. And that's why there's a code to it. It can be, but it will not always be. So I'm going to give a quick example, which will show you or illuminate and a bit of a personal example. All right. So I'm Korean. I'm Korean American, second generation. And let me just say that some Korean food, you may not like the smell if you're not used to Korean food, right? So I, growing up in America, love the smell of pizza, love the smell of continental cuisine, love the smell of French food, most of it, right? But Korean cuisine, some of it, it's going to smell a little bit different to you, right? Tastes delicious to me, but even I would admit, like, wow, that's a bit of a strong smell, right? So I would, and sometimes I'm not sure I should do this. I question myself that I'm not going to bring this food in and heat it up at work. I mean, back at the time where we actually used to go in and have a pantry, right? So imagine you go to Korea. You're visiting a friend or you're on a business trip and you taste this sundubu, right? It's this delicious, spicy, soft tofu stew. My wife makes it. It's delicious. And then you come back to the States and you find a local Korean restaurant and you get a big pot of it and there's some leftovers and you're excited and you bring it into work, right? You're going to bring it into work. You're starting a brand new job. Nobody knows you, right? So you get to your work, you have orientation. You don't really get to meet many people other than the orientation people. You're so excited. You go to lunch, you stick this in the microwave, and you are stinking up the office, right? It's not microwave popcorn, which I can't stand the smell of, but it's this smell that people are not used to, right? Because we work in these offices, you and I, where people are not used to heating this up. Unless you work at Samsung or something, you're not going to get this smell, right? Now, let's say someone comes into the pantry and sees you heating this up. You're brand new. How are they going to react to you? Most people. How dare you? How inconsiderate. Who do you think you are heating up this food? Now, from my perspective, from an authenticity perspective, it's my food. It's my, ethnic food. It tastes delicious. I love the way it tastes, right? Maybe I don't think the smell is beautiful or wonderful because it's a strong smell, but I don't like hate the smell, right? Like when I cook it at home, like I don't get upset at my wife for cooking it, right? But you can expect that reaction, right? You can expect it. However, let's flip the switch a little bit, right? Let's say this is being heated up and instead you are the CEO of the organization. You're the new CEO or you're the new C something. And people have been hearing about you coming and they're excited. They know who you are. They walk in and they turn the corner and they're like, what is this funky smell? And they see you, famous, popular, powerful person, heating up this thing. Now what's their reaction? Think that might be different? What changed? Did the smell change? No. Or what if they round the corner and it's this guy, right? You know, this guy, the Canadian astronaut who sang the David Bowie song, he's like a social media star. What if it's him, right? And they see him. All of a sudden, instead of being, how dare you, be like, oh, Chris Hadfield, that's amazing that you're here. What are you heating up? That's so cool. I've never tried that before. Hey, do you mind if I taste some of that? Right? Does it taste better than it smells? Right? You may get a totally different reaction. Well, what changed, people? What was the difference between you, nobody knows, and you, very popular liked? What changed? Power. Yeah, power is part of it. You don't need to have power for it to change, but yes, power definitely helps. What else? Executive presence. Yep. Yep. At its most basic level, and I go by the connection counselor, it's a clue. What changed? Yeah. It's your relation to them. Exactly, Rachel. It's your connection, right? Connection changes the perception, right? Power creates an automatic connection because it's sort of forced on you, right? Like you're subject to it, right? That's what power is, right? But the difference is when you have high connection, your authenticity becomes an asset. When you have low connection, your authenticity becomes a liability. So if you go into an environment and you're like, love me just as I am, and nobody knows you, no one appreciates you, you haven't formed that connection, then everything you do that is different will be used against you, will be counted against you, and you will be disliked possibly because of it. Versus when you are extremely highly connected to people, those differences become innovative. They become novel, interesting, diverse, inclusive, versus how dare you. So people get authenticity a little bit, they get a little bit ahead of themselves. They think I can just be myself and I don't have to care about my relationship with other people and they should just like me, right? It's never worked that way. It's never going to work that way. The difference is some people are automatically more like the majority and the power structure and other people are not. It doesn't mean you can't have authenticity. It just means you have to work on the connection to tap into the full power of your authenticity. Is it fair? Heck no. Is it required? Is it effective? Yes and yes. Yeah, I always start from connection, right? The more connected you are with a person, the more you can reveal of yourself. I mean, this is a horrible analogy, but think about like dating, right? Like you go on a first date, you don't tell everyone like your deepest, darkest secrets and like foibles and, regrets. You're going to scare people away, right? Like you have to build up some trust. People have to get to know you and say, oh, you're a decent person. And, second date, third date. And all of a sudden you can reveal more. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah. And then it's magical. They receive it so much more differently. And the thing you didn't change. Who you are hasn't changed. The relationship can bear the difference, right? So that's why in interviews, we're professionals. We have to be able to read people. It's almost like playing poker. I'll meet some people, I vibe with them right away and I can make an off-color joke. I can, be a little bit more teasing of them, right? It's a risk. It's always a risk, but I can read that. And other times I'm like, you know what? This person seems really straight-laced. I'm just going to play it corporate style. Right? And if I see an opening, maybe I'll take it, but I'm not going to inject my humor, my personality on them because I think they should appreciate it. Big mistake. They're going to appreciate what they're ready to appreciate, and that's it. Yeah. Great, Jason. And two of my favorite topics. So I started out thinking about charisma. And the difference with charisma, right, is charisma, the end result is people want to be around you because you make them feel good, right? You give them emotionally what they need. Now, you can be that way, but I may not trust you to drive my car. I may not trust you to lead my team, but darn, aren't you a nice person to go to lunch with, right? So executive presence, you may not give me anything emotionally, right? Maybe you're kind of cold to me, but darn if you don't get those projects delivered in time. Darn if you don't deliver those numbers, right? If that's what I'm concerned about, then you're getting the job, not the person I go to lunch with. Well, from an ethical standpoint. If I'm corrupt, then all bets are off. Great point. The last thing I'll say as we wrap up and kick it back to Lauren to wrap us up. Now that you see this and now that you understand the framework, you can't unsee it. When you see leaders and you're like, man, why does everyone want to follow them? You'll understand. This is why. Because they know that this person is going to get the you know what done. Right? That is the key. And if you can drive that, all politics and corruption aside, if you can, and here's the thing, you haven't done it yet, right? You get the position before you've done it, right? It's all about perception, and it's not about faking. It's about being in a way that people are more likely to believe that you can do it versus the other person who also hasn't done it. That's what executive presence gets you. Remember, spark, that's who you are, your individuality. Fuel, that's your effort and what you've done and what you produce. Oxygen, opportunity. You need the opportunity, and the opportunity is made available by executive presence. Awesome. Courtney, you can definitely come. I'm just going to leave with one last statement. It's the same statement that I made when I started. I see all of you. You all have unlimited potential, right? Put that, now it's going to be a woman on the moon, right? Artemis 2 is putting a woman on the moon. However, you got to understand, you got to have that spark. You need the fuel, and you need the opportunity. You need the oxygen. Otherwise, we don't get there. So thanks, everyone.